Dust Creek valleys stretched as far as the eye could see, golden plains meeting jagged canyons under a relentless sun. For generations, the Harrisons and the Caldwells had been enemies, locked in a feud that shaped every family story, every whispered warning, every cautious glance across the valley. Land, cattle, and pride had sparked quarrels that turned brothers into rivals and fathers into enemies. Clara Caldwell had grown up on the Caldwell ranch, learning how to ride before she could walk properly. She had learned even earlier that a Harrison could not be trusted. Her father's voice haunted her childhood. "Mark my words, Clara, if a Harrison crosses our land, trouble follows." Every day she rode past the ridges, wary of the distant clouds of dust that signaled the Harrison's herd. Luke Harrison, meanwhile, had grown under the same warnings. His father, stern and unyielding, drilled into him the same lesson. A Caldwell girl is off-limits, boy. Stay away or you'll regret it. Yet, as Luke matured, he began to question the blind hatred that consumed both families. He had seen the Caldwells' land and cattle. He had heard their stories, their laughter, their whispered dreams of a future untouched by the feud. Something stirred inside him, something that the rules of family honor could not contain. The wind swept across the valley, carrying dust and the faint scent of wildflowers. In that moment, both Clara and Luke could feel the invisible line that divided them. One day, someone would have to cross it, and perhaps that someone would be them. The sun hung high over Dust Creek Valley, casting harsh shadows across the rolling plains. Clara Caldwell urged her horse forward, scanning the herd below. The cows had scattered during the early morning stampede, and she had been sent to round them up before the Harrisons noticed. Her brown hair whipped in the wind and sweat stung her eyes, but she didn't slow. Every muscle in her body was tense, trained for a life on horseback in a land of endless work. Then she saw him, Luke Harrison, riding at the head of his herd, eyes sharp, hands steady on the reins. Her stomach twisted. Every instinct told her to flee. Every story she had ever been told shouted that Harrisons meant danger. Yet, for reasons she didn't understand, she couldn't look away. Luke caught sight of her too. His pulse quickened, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Clara Caldwell, tall, proud, and fierce, stood out against the golden plains. His mind screamed at him to turn away, but something deeper drew him forward. Hours passed in tense observation. Then, as luck or fate would have it, a sudden dust storm rolled in from the northern ridge, churning sand and grit across the valley. Both families scrambled to shelter, and Clara found herself ducking under the awning of the town trading post. She wasn't alone. Luke was there too, pressing his back against the weathered wood. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, voice low, trying not to let his concern show too much. Clara raised an eyebrow, brushing sand from her sleeve. "And you think I need a Harrison to protect me?" He chuckled softly, though the tension in the air made it almost painful. "Maybe not, but maybe I like keeping you safe." The wind howled around them, lifting dust into the air, blurring the edges of the trading post. Clara's heart beat faster than her horse ever had. She wanted to argue, to tell him it was impossible, forbidden. But the truth escaped her lips before she could stop it. Maybe I like that too," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Luke's eyes softened. "Then we have to be careful. My family, your family. They wouldn't understand. But for a few stolen moments, maybe we don't have to care." The storm passed as quickly as it had arrived. Dust settled around them, but a spark had ignited an unspoken bond that neither could ignore. They rode out separately that evening, hearts heavy with exhilaration and dread. The valley had always been full of danger, but for the first time, Clara and Luke felt a different kind of risk, one that had nothing to do with cattle or gunfire. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the plains gold and crimson, both of them knew one undeniable truth. The feud would not define their hearts. Not entirely. And in the quiet, after the storm, Dust Creek Valley seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move, in a game that had begun long before either of them was born. The morning sun spilled over Dust Creek Valley, turning the plains into a sea of gold. Clara Caldwell adjusted her hat, squinting against the light, as she guided her horse along the narrow canyon trail. She knew this path well. It was one of the few hidden routes through the hills, a place where neither Harrison nor Caldwell eyes could reach her. Today, however, she was not alone. Luke Harrison emerged from behind a ridge, dust rising from his horse's hooves. "You're late," he said, a teasing lilt in his voice. Clara's eyes narrowed, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "I had to make sure no one followed me." Luke laughed, a warm sound that seemed almost foreign in the tension-filled valley. "You always have to be so careful, don't you?" "I've learned from the best," she shot back, her grin defying the canyon's shadowed walls. They rode together through the winding trails, the canyon walls rising like silent guardians around them. The wind swept through the narrow passes, tugging at Clara's hair and whipping the dust into the sunlight. For a few stolen hours, the world outside the canyon ceased to exist. There were no families, no grudges, no expectations, just two young people racing across sunlit plains, on horses that knew every path, every hidden ridge. Luke slowed his horse as they reached a secluded clearing where wildflowers nodded in the morning breeze. "I've been thinking," he said, dismounting and stretching his legs. "Maybe there's a way we don't have to hide forever." Clara's heart skipped a beat. "You really think that's possible?" "I do," he said, brushing dirt from his coat. "But we have to be smart. One wrong move, and we could make the feud explode in ways neither of us wants." Clara sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I know, but sometimes I hate having to sneak around, pretending like we're just friends, when I know we're more." Luke stepped closer, their boots crunching on the sun-baked soil. "I feel the same. Every time I see you, it's like the rest of the valley disappears. I hate the feud, but I hate hiding from you even more." She looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there, the same longing she felt. "Then we'll find a way," she whispered. Their horses shifted impatiently, reminding them that time in the canyon was finite. They mounted and rode deeper into the hills, weaving through hidden paths and over ridges that few dared to traverse. The valley below sprawled endlessly, cattle grazing and rivers glinting in the morning sun. A paradise marred by decades of hatred. But today, they didn't think about grudges. They laughed as Luke spurred his horse, racing Clara along the ridges. Dust swirled around them, creating a golden haze that made the moment feel suspended in time. For a few hours, the valley was theirs, yet shadows loomed. Ben Harrison, Luke's older brother, had spotted him slipping away again. His jaw tightened, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Luke will pay for this," he muttered, eyes scanning the distant ridges. Secrets were dangerous, and if the wrong person discovered them, the consequences could be catastrophic. Clara, oblivious to the looming threat, paused at a rocky outcrop, letting her horse catch its breath. "I wish we could live like this all the time," she murmured, brushing sweat and dust from her face. Luke dismounted, moving close enough to take her hand. "Maybe we will, someday, if we're brave enough to fight for it. Not with fists or guns, but with whatever it takes to make them see it's worth more than the feud." Clara felt a shiver run through her. The wind whispered through the canyon, as if carrying their secret to the hills themselves. She nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Then we fight. Together." They rode back toward the valley as the sun climbed higher, golden light glinting off their horses' coats. The canyon faded behind them, but the bond they had forged remained strong. The feud still waited, lurking in the shadows of the valley. But Clara and Luke had discovered something worth risking everything for. The possibility of a love that could survive the Dust Creek Valley itself. As they reached the edge of the hills, dust from distant cattle drives drifted in the wind, reminding them that danger was never far away. But together, They felt unstoppable. The morning sun glared over Dust Creek Valley, turning the plains into a shimmering gold. Clara, Caldwell rode hard, her horse's hooves kicking up dust as she drove a small group of cattle toward the northern pasture. Her eyes scanned the horizon, alert for the Harrisons' herd, which had been creeping too close to Caldwell land for weeks. Luke Harrison appeared over a ridge, dust swirling around his horse. He was heading in the same direction, scouting the area, and his gaze locked on Clara immediately. "Clara, wait," he called, spurring his horse forward. Clara turned sharply, heart skipping a beat. "Luke, what are you doing here? You could get caught." Luke grinned, though tension lined his face. "Someone has to keep you out of trouble, Caldwell." Her eyes narrowed. "I can handle myself, Harrison." They rode together across the open plain, the wind whipping their hair and dust clouding the air around them. For a fleeting moment they laughed, the sound almost drowned out by the low rumble of hooves and the anxious calls of the cattle. But the valley was never quiet for long. A sudden shout split the air. "Harrison's Caldwells. Get your cattle back." Clara's stomach dropped. From the ridge above, Ben Harrison and 2 ranch hands were driving a Harrison herd into her family's pasture. The clash of animals sent a stampede rippling through the field. Clara whistled sharply, urging her cows away from the chaos. Luke's eyes darkened. "Stay close to me," he warned, grabbing the reins tightly. His horse charged into the fray, trying to separate the stampede. Dust and dirt stung Clara's eyes, and a loud gunshot rang out in the distance. Clara froze for a heartbeat, fear tightening her chest. "Luke," she shouted. He had been ambushed while scouting the northern pasture earlier, and now the echo of gunfire reminded her of the danger that surrounded them. Luke's horse stumbled slightly, throwing dust into the air, and Clara spurred her horse forward, weaving through the chaos to reach him. He leaned against a fence post, blood seeping from a shallow cut on his arm. But his jaw was set, determination blazing in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, brushing grit from his face. Clara dismounted swiftly, ignoring the pain in her own legs from the ride. "You're reckless, Luke Harrison. One more misstep, and—" "Worth it," he interrupted, his voice low but steady. "If it means I get to see you, Clara." Her heart ached at his words, fear mixing with the warmth of something more than friendship. She helped him to his horse, guiding him into the safety of a nearby canyon path. The dust cloud from the stampede followed them, curling around rocks and thorny bushes. The valley alive with the roar of hooves and the cries of frightened cattle. They reached a narrow ravine, the only place where the stampede couldn't reach. Both of their horses panted heavily, nostrils flaring as Clara tended to Luke's cut. She pressed a cloth against it, glancing up at him. "You're impossible," she said softly, half laughing despite the tension. "I know," he replied, smirking despite the pain. "But I had to make sure you were safe." Clara shook her head, brushing dust from her hair. "You could have been killed. Don't make me regret saving you." Luke grabbed her hand, squeezing it gently. "I trust you, Clara, and I need you to trust me too. We can't let the feud rule our lives." The sun climbed higher in the sky, lighting the canyon in stark gold and shadows. The stampede had passed, but the danger remained. Both families were watching, waiting, ready to strike at the first misstep. Clara climbed onto her horse, Luke following. "We need to get back," she said, determination in her voice. "Before anyone notices we've been gone." Luke nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. "Together," he said. "Always together." As they rode back toward the valley, dust swirling in their wake, both knew that their love had become more than a secret hit, was a lifeline in a valley where danger lurked in every ridge, every shadow, every family feud. And though the feud still simmered like dry kindling, Clara and Luke had discovered that courage, love, and loyalty could burn brighter than any feud, if only they dared to hold on. The sun hung high over Dust Creek Valley, baking the plains with relentless heat. Clara Caldwell rode along a familiar ridge, her horse's hooves kicking up golden dust. The events of the last week weighed heavily on her. The Harrison-Caldwell feud had flared more violently than ever, and Luke's ambush during the cattle drive reminded her that danger was never far. Yet beneath the worry, there was an undeniable pulling ache in her chest whenever she thought of him. Luke emerged from a nearby ravine, dust trailing behind his horse. His eyes, sharp and determined, softened the instant they met hers. "Clara," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk. Away from everyone." Flo slowed, feeling her pulse quicken. "You think I don't know why?" she asked, a hint of frustration in her tone. "My father already warned me. Your family will never understand," Luke finished, mirroring her thought. "I know, but hiding isn't helping either of us. I don't want to live like this, always sneaking around, always fearing the next fight." They rode toward the canyon where they had spent so many secret hours together. The wind tugged at their clothes, and the sunlight cast dramatic shadows across the rocks. For a moment, the outside world, the valley, the feud, their families felt distant. Here, they were just Clara and Luke, two young people daring to love in a world that demanded hate. Clara's horse stumbled slightly over a loose stone, and she steadied it with a sigh. "I hate this," she admitted. "I hate that our families won't let us live like normal people, that every choice we make is second-guessed, that even a simple ride together feels like a rebellion." Luke reached for her hand, brushing dust from her sleeve. "Then we choose differently. Not by ignoring them, but by showing them there's another way. One choice, our choice, can change everything." Clara's heart pounded. "And if they refuse, then we stand together anyway," Luke said firmly, eyes blazing. "I'd rather risk everything with you than live without you." The weight of his words settled over her, the sunlight glinting off the canyon walls. She swallowed, feeling the courage in his voice ignite something inside her. Together, she whispered, the word carrying more promise than she had ever felt. But reality waited beyond the canyon's edge. By midday, the tension in the valley had reached a peak. Both families were preparing for another cattle confrontation, and rumors of their secret meetings were beginning to spread. Clara's father, stern and unyielding, had summoned her back to the Caldwell ranch. Luke's older brother Ben had already spotted his absence, eyes narrowing in suspicion. As they rode back through the plains, Clara spoke quietly. "Luke, we can't keep doing this in secret forever. My father will threaten, yell, maybe even strike me if he finds out," Luke finished, his voice tight. "I know, but we can't let fear dictate our lives. There has to be a way to show them our love is stronger than this feud." A hawk circled overhead, casting fleeting shadows across the golden grass. The wind carried the faint rumble of cattle hooves in the distance, reminding them of the ongoing conflict. They slowed, scanning the horizon together, feeling the tension coil like a spring in their chests. Clara took a deep breath, letting the warm daylight wash over her. "Then we fight," she said finally, determination shining in her eyes. "Not with guns or fists, but with everything we have. If they want to keep hating each other, that's their choice, but I choose us." Luke smiled, a mixture of relief and admiration in his gaze. "And I choose us, too, Clara. No matter what comes." The two rode in silence, the weight of their shared decision grounding them. Behind them, Dust Creek Valley stretched wide, the sun reflecting off the plains, hills, and distant rivers. Danger, grudges, and suspicion waited. But for the first time, Clara and Luke felt the power of their own choice. They had dared to defy the feud, to carve their own path, and the valley seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. As they returned toward their respective homes, the dust settled around them, golden in the daylight. And a single truth remained clear. Whatever storms might come, they would face them together. Their love had become more than a secret. It had become a force, strong enough to challenge generations of hate. The sun rose high over Dust Creek Valley, spilling golden light over the county fairgrounds. Banners fluttered in the warm breeze, horses whinnying and cattle lowing, while townsfolk bustled between stalls, games, and displays of prize livestock. Normally, Clara Caldwell would have felt excitement at the fair corn dogs, ribbon contests, and a break from endless ranch work, but today, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. Luke Harrison rode beside her, his horse prancing nervously over the sun-baked dirt. "You're quiet," he said, glancing down at her. "Thinking about your father." Clara exhaled slowly, gripping the reins. "I'm thinking about everyone. Both families will be here. Any wrong look, any word, it could blow up before we even get a chance to explain." Luke nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we make them listen together." Their plan was simple, though risky. They would ride into the center of the fairgrounds, hand in hand, and announce their love publicly. No hiding, no whispers. If the feud continued, at least they would have faced it with courage. As they entered the bustling fair, heads turned, horses halted, children pointed, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Clara's father, tall and imposing, spotted her immediately, his brow furrowing. Beside him, Ben Harrison stiffened, anger flashing in his eyes as he noticed Luke. Clara took a deep breath. "Luke," she whispered. "Ready?" "Always," he replied, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. They rode to the center of the fairgrounds, dust swirling around their boots and hooves. Silence fell slowly as the crowd took in the sight. A Caldwell and a Harrison, side by side, standing tall in the sunlit daylight. Luke dismounted first, holding out a hand to Clara. "We love each other," he declared, voice carrying across the fairgrounds. "And if this feud continues, we all lose. It's time to end it." A murmur ran through the crowd, disbelief and shock mixing in the warm sunlight. Clara's father's face was unreadable, his eyes narrowed. Ben Harrison's fingers twitched near his holster, and several ranch hands shifted uneasily. Clara stepped forward, meeting Luke's gaze before looking at the crowd. "We've risked everything," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "We've seen what hatred and grudges can do. We don't want to fight anymore. We want peace." For a long moment, the valley seemed to hold its breath. Dust hung in the golden air, swirling around their horses and boots. The sun reflected off the metal of saddles, guns, and belt buckles, casting long shadows across the fairgrounds. Finally, Clara's father spoke, his voice low but measured. "If you're willing to risk everything for this, then maybe it's time we try to understand." He glanced at the Harrisons, then back at Clara. "We'll see if the feud can end." Ben Harrison's anger softened, though reluctantly. "You've both been foolish," he said gruffly, "but maybe this will work. Don't push it." A cheer erupted from the townsfolk, who had been holding their breath during the tense confrontation. Children clapped, ranch hands whistled, and even some of the wary townspeople smiled. Dust swirled through the fairgrounds, catching the sunlight and creating a halo of gold around Clara and Luke. Luke extended his hand to Clara, lifting it slightly, as if to claim the victory. "We did it," he said quietly, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Clara's eyes sparkled, the sunlight catching in her hair. "We did together." The two mounted their horses again, riding slowly through the fairgrounds as the crowd parted, giving them space. Dust rose behind their hooves, the golden light illuminating the valley in a moment of triumph. The feud had not disappeared completely, but for the first time in generations, a Caldwell and a Harrison had chosen love over hate, and the valley had witnessed it in full daylight. As they reached the edge of the fairgrounds, Luke glanced at Clara. "The valley might never forget this day," he said softly. Clara smiled, her heart full. "Neither will we. And maybe, just maybe, Dust Creek Valley can learn to forgive." Together, they rode toward the ridge, dust swirling around them like a curtain of hope. For Clara Caldwell and Luke Harrison, The sunlit valley was no longer just a place of conflict, it was the beginning of everything they had dared to dream. The sun rose over Dust Creek Valley, gilding the plains and canyons with golden light. Clara Caldwell adjusted her hat and scanned the horizon, her heart light for the first time in years. The county fair confrontation had changed everything. Both families had agreed, at least tentatively, to let go of the feud, at the very least, to tolerate the impossible. A Caldwell and a Harrison in love. Luke Harrison rode beside her, his horse kicking up dust as they followed a winding canyon path. He glanced at her, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. "You look like you've finally breathed again." Clara chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I feel like I can. For the first time, we don't have to hide. We don't have to sneak around or worry about ambushes." Luke reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers. "I've been dreaming of this, riding side by side with you, not worrying about grudges or gunfire, just freedom." They rode through the valley, dust swirling behind their horses, the plains stretching endlessly before them. The golden sunlight illuminated every ridge and hill, casting long shadows and highlighting the rugged beauty of the land. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and wildflowers, and the quiet of the valley felt like a promise. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Clara asked softly, her eyes on the distant horizon. "We've defied generations of hatred, but life on the ranch is never easy." Luke laughed lightly, the sound echoing across the plains. "I think about it all the time, and I know it won't be easy, but I also know we can face anything together." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "We've survived storms, stampedes, gunfire, a feud. What's a little hard work compared to that?" Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "I suppose you're right. And at least we won't have to fight for every moment in secret anymore." They rode on, the valley alive with movement, cattle grazing lazily, horses tied to posts outside distant homesteads, townsfolk beginning their day. Dust Creek Valley had not forgotten the feud, but in the bright daylight it seemed to pause, giving way to something new, hope. As they reached the top of a ridge, the valley stretched before them, bathed in sunlight. Clara's heart swelled at the sight. "It feels different now," she murmured, "like the valley itself is forgiving." Luke's eyes softened. "It's more than that. It's a new beginning. For us, for our families, for the valley itself. We've proven that love can survive anything, even generations of hate." Clara leaned back in her saddle, letting the wind whip her hair, feeling the freedom of the open plains. "Do you remember our first ride together through that hidden canyon?" she asked, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. Luke chuckled, brushing dust from his coat. "I remember thinking how reckless it was, and how I couldn't imagine ever letting go of you. And here we are," Clara said, smiling. "Still reckless, still alive, and still together." Luke reached out, pulling her closer as their horses trotted down the ridge. "Still us," he said, voice full of conviction. "And now we can ride into every sunrise side by side." The wind carried the sound of hooves across the valley, a steady rhythm that matched their hearts. Dust rose behind them in golden clouds, shimmering in the sunlight. Every ridge, every hill, every canyon felt like a testament to their courage, their loyalty, and their love. As the sun climbed higher, Clara and Luke rode into the valley, hand in hand. Families watched quietly from a distance, some with wary smiles, others with grudging respect. The feud had not vanished completely, but it no longer controlled the lives of those brave enough to rise above it. Clara turned her head to look at Luke, sunlight catching in his eyes. "So, what's next?" she asked. Luke grinned, pulling her closer. "Whatever we want, Dust Creek Valley is ours now, Clara. Let's make it a home worth loving." And with that, they rode on together, the sun blazing over the plains, dust swirling around them like a golden cloak. Love had survived the feud. Courage had tamed the valley. and Clara Caldwell and Luke Harrison side by side had found a new horizon, full of promise, adventure, and a future they would carve together, one sunlit day at a time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories up in the sky.